I believe that peace stands on two pillars. And these two pillars are both essential. You can't have peace with one without the other. And the two pillars are justice and forgiveness. I think too often we forget the element of justice, and we concentrate too much on getting beyond the past, accepting what's been going on. But if you don't have justice, people are still going to be feeling the resentment. They're going to be passing on this resentment from one generation to the next generation. This is going to crystallize into hatred. You have to have justice. But I think that our religious leaders very often fail to take this whole issue seriously. Somebody has in your family has died due to a drone attack, or your you've lost people in your family due to massacres, and we say, don't demonize the enemy. Don't get beyond it. Live with it. Learn to live for the future. Move beyond it. It doesn't work. You have to have justice, and if we aren't concentrating on that, if we forget that, we're not going to find peace. The other principle is forgiveness. Justice, although it is essential to peace, is not enough, and by itself can't do it, because justice, we can offer people a good package, a good solution, a possibility of rebuilding, but the resentments, the feelings, the strong sentiments of anger, resentment are going to continue. We have to have forgiveness. And I think we underestimate this second principle often as well. We say, I don't find it so difficult to forgive, but I think there is nothing more humanly difficult to do than to forgive. I remember speaking to a woman in Indonesia, and she was talking about how much she suffers from what had happened to her many years before. And I said, well, you have to learn to forgive these people. She said, they killed my father, my brother, my husband. She says, I can't forgive them. I want to do the same to them. Now, she was being honest. And I think there is nothing more difficult than forgiveness for us to do as humans. Now, this is where I believe that our religions can play a positive role in peace building by focusing on these elements of justice and forgiveness. We look back in our scriptures and we find the importance of both of these. Now, we can ask ourselves, is this purely theoretical? Is this the sort of thing that we say to make ourselves feel good? I think we need some examples. There are examples of where religious leaders have been able to play a key role in building peace. And I want to mention just 3 of these if I have time. They're ones that I know personally. First is from West African country of Sierra Leone. You'll remember the terrible civil war that ensued in the 1990s. And as the war dragged on from year to year, the government forces had lost credibility because of their inefficiency, because of the corruption. The rebels at first had a lot of sympathy among the people, but because of the cruelty and the looting that went on, and eventually, even worse, the mutilations that were taking place, trying to prove to people that the government could not protect them. The regional forces came in. They were ineffective. The United Nations forces arrived, but seemed confused about the local realities. Were not very effective in bringing about a peace. As time went on, there were really only 2 forces in society that really commanded people's credibility, and they were the tribal leaders and the religious leaders. Now, the religious leaders had pretty much known each other through the the interreligious forums, through the dialogue that had been going on in the previous years. And it was they who were able to use their social mobility. In the mornings they could meet with a farmers union. In the noontime they could meet with women's organizations. In the evening they could meet with the army or the politicians. And they were the ones who really brokered the peace that is still lasting in Sierra Leone until today. Now, they were only able to do this because they were able to work together. And they were only able to work together because they knew each other. And we'll see another example of this, turning to another very different part of the world, the southern Philippines. You remember the terrible clashes that took place between Christians and Muslims in the southern Philippines in the early 1970s, and the liberation movement, the MNLF, that grew out of this. Well, peace talks dragged on once again for year after year, and finally a peace agreement was reached. Well, nobody liked it. And the Christians were saying, "Oh, they're giving away the islands to the Muslims. We're going to have Sharia law. We're going to have Islamic State, and we're going to be displaced." And they were very unhappy. Muslims were just as unhappy. They said it's all paper benefits. We're not. Maybe some of the civil servants and the landowners and the important politicians, they're going to benefit from it, but there's nothing in here for the ordinary Muslim. And so nobody liked the agreement, which was full of holes and had a lot of problems connected with it. It looked like this, that things were going to drag on for another long, long time. And the religious leaders came together. They said, if anybody's going to sell this to the people, it's going to have to be us. So they formed what they called the Bishops' Ulama Forum. And it's been meeting every 3 months since that time. Now I think it's 16 years, if I'm not mistaken. They've discussed every aspect of life in the southern Philippines. They've called in experts, and whether it be land issues, or whether it be environmental issues, whether it be questions of drugs, whether it be questions of military brutality. And they've been making joint statements, which I think is really important. If it had been one group or the other making these statements, they would have been listened to politely and ignored. But when they speak together, and the leaders have been the Catholic and Protestant leaders, the Muslim ulama, and the leaders of the indigenous peoples, making these statements together in the name of all the people, they've been able to have a good amount of influence. Final example I want to mention is you remember the conflict in the late 1990s in Indonesia. There was quite a bit of violence between Christians and Muslims in eastern Indonesia, in Maluku. I was living there at the time, and I remember one terrible day we had a really awful news, and that was there was a massacre of about 35 Muslims done by local Christians. And everybody thought, this is going to really be a conflagration. It's going to spread from one island to the other, and the whole place is going to explode. At that point, the religious leaders, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, who knew each other already and had an opportunity to trust each other and believe each other, they said, we'll go on television together and make a statement saying people to stay in your homes, don't go down on the streets, don't pick up weapons. Christianity doesn't teach violence. Islam doesn't teach violence. Buddhism doesn't teach violence. Hindus don't teach violence. And it took a while to bring about peace. But we didn't have that conflagration, and I think we really would have, because the feelings were really strong. So when we're talking about peace, I think we don't don't skip ahead to the absolute peace that is the ideal society that we want to have together, that every element at bringing even a partial peace is a step forward. Finally, I conclude with when the government and the local leaders were trying to bring peace to the parts of central and eastern Indonesia, who did they call upon? Once again, it was the religious leaders. And I can remember in the mosques and in the churches in the east, there were prayers. There were prayers every day. People were accompanying their leaders in trying to build peace. And I remember the day when finally the Malino Accords, which established the peace in the two instances, the Allahu Akbar from the mosques and the church bells ringing constantly. It was a reminder that religious groups, religious leaders, religious believers, when they work together, they can make a positive contribution to peace.
Amen.
Thank you.